Ishtar, known as one of the most significant deities of the ancient Mesopotamian pantheon, holds a prominent position in the religious, cultural, and mythological history of the region. As the goddess of love, fertility, sex, war, and power, Ishtar's influence permeated every aspect of life in the ancient world, making her a complex and multifaceted figure. She was primarily worshipped in the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian cultures, where she was closely associated with the earlier Sumerian goddess Inanna. To explore her importance, one must delve into her origins, her roles and symbols, her mythology, and her enduring legacy. Origins and identity. Ishtar, known by various names across different regions, traces her origins to Sumer, where she was worshipped as Inanna. Inanna was a Sumerian goddess, whose cult can be traced back to the 4th millennium BCE. When the Akkadians rose to power in Mesopotamia around the 24th century BCE, they adopted Inanna and renamed her Ishtar, integrating her into their own pantheon. Though Inanna and Ishtar shared many attributes, Ishtar's identity further evolved as she became more associated with Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian cultures. Ishtar was considered a daughter of the moon god Sin, also known as Nana, and the sister of the sun god Shamash. This divine familial connection underscored her role in the celestial hierarchy of Mesopotamian religion. Despite being a fertility goddess, Ishtar was also a goddess of war, reflecting the dual nature of love and violence often attributed to her. In some myths, she is also linked with the planet Venus, reflecting her connection with love, beauty, and the cycles of life. Role and symbols. Ishtar's influence was vast, and she was worshipped in temples throughout Mesopotamia. Her most famous cult center was in the city of Uruk, where she was revered as the city's patron deity. The Aina temple, dedicated to her, was one of the most important religious sites in the ancient world. Ishtar's role as a fertility goddess made her an essential figure for agricultural societies, and her blessings were sought to ensure bountiful harvests, successful childbirth, and prosperity. However, Ishtar was not merely a nurturing goddess, she also embodied the darker, more destructive aspects of love and war. Her duality is evident in her representations. In art, Ishtar is often depicted with symbols that reflect her power over life and death. She is frequently shown holding a lion, symbolizing her strength and dominance. The lion, often considered the king of beasts, highlights her position as a goddess who can control the forces of nature and command both respect and fear. Another symbol associated with Ishtar is the 8-pointed star, which represents the planet Venus and signifies her connection to love and fertility. Ishtar's warlike nature is also emphasized by her frequent depiction with weapons, such as a quiver of arrows or a mace. This representation underscores her role as a protector of kings and warriors, further linking her to the political and military spheres. In some cases, she is portrayed standing on the backs of 2 lions, a motif that symbolizes her absolute power and authority over both the natural and human worlds. Mythology. Ishtar's myths are as complex as her identity, with tales that explore her relationships with other deities, her interactions with humanity, and her ventures into the underworld. One of the most famous myths associated with Ishtar is the descent of Ishtar to the underworld, a story that reflects her dual role as a goddess of life and death. In this myth, Ishtar descends into the underworld, ruled by her sister Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead. Her journey is motivated by various reasons depending on the version of the myth. In some accounts, Ishtar seeks to rescue her lover Tammuz, also known as Dumuzi, the god of vegetation and fertility, who had died and descended into the underworld. In other versions, her descent is driven by a desire to usurp her sister's power and expand her own dominion. As Ishtar descends through the 7 gates of the underworld, she is stripped of her garments and divine powers. When she finally reaches Ereshkigal, she is imprisoned and killed, causing all fertility on earth to cease. This event throws the world into chaos, as crops wither and life begins to fade. Eventually, the gods intervene, and Ishtar is resurrected and allowed to return to the world of the living. Upon her return, life resumes, and fertility is restored to the land. This myth symbolizes the cyclical nature of life and death and reinforces Ishtar's role as a goddess who governs both creation and destruction. Another important myth involving Ishtar is her relationship with Tammuz, her lover. The story of Ishtar and Tammuz reflects the changing seasons and the natural cycles of life. Tammuz, a shepherd god, represents the vegetation that dies in the heat of summer and is reborn in the spring. Ishtar's mourning for Tammuz symbolizes the sorrow of the land during the barren months, while his return represents the renewal of life. The annual festival of the death and resurrection of Tammuz was an important event in the Mesopotamian religious calendar, reflecting the agricultural importance of this cycle. In addition to these myths, Ishtar also plays a significant role in the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this epic, Ishtar becomes infatuated with the hero Gilgamesh and proposes marriage to him. However, Gilgamesh rejects her advances, citing the misfortunes that befell her previous lovers. Enraged by his refusal, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish him, resulting in a fierce battle between Gilgamesh, his companion Enkidu, and the divine beast. The defeat of the bull of heaven further angers Ishtar, leading to Enkidu's death, which ultimately prompts Gilgamesh's quest for immortality. This myth highlights Ishtar's volatile nature and her power to influence the fates of both mortals and gods. Legacy and influence. Ishtar's influence extended beyond the borders of Mesopotamia, as her worship spread to neighboring regions such as Syria, Anatolia, and Canaan. In these areas, she was often identified with other goddesses, such as Astarte in Canaan and the Hittite goddess Shashka. Her legacy also persisted through the millennia, influencing later goddesses in the Mediterranean world, such as Aphrodite in Greece and Venus in Rome. The connection between Ishtar and these later deities highlights the enduring nature of her archetype as a goddess of love, fertility, and war. In modern times, Ishtar has become a subject of interest in various fields, including archaeology, mythology, and religious studies. Scholars have studied her cult and the role of women in ancient Mesopotamian society, noting how Ishtar's worship reflected both the empowerment and subjugation of women. On the one hand, Ishtar was a powerful goddess who commanded respect and authority, but on the other hand, her myths often portray her as capricious and dangerous, reinforcing stereotypes about female power. Ishtar's imagery and symbolism continue to resonate in popular culture as well. She has appeared in literature, films, and video games, often as a symbol of feminine power or as a figure of duality and complexity. Her myths, particularly her descent into the underworld, have been retold and reinterpreted in various ways, reflecting her enduring appeal as a character who embodies both the light and dark aspects of existence. Ishtar's significance in the ancient world cannot be overstated. As a goddess who represented both creation and destruction, love and war, she embodied the complexities of life and the human experience. Her myths, symbols, and worship reflect the values and beliefs of ancient Mesopotamian society, while her legacy continues to influence modern interpretations of femininity, power, and divinity. Through her dual nature and multifaceted identity, Ishtar remains one of the most intriguing and enduring figures in the history of religion.